Welcome to Playing with Fire, the podcast for people who are ready to custom build their love.
We're talking about non-monogamy, however you design it, as an individuation opportunity.
Want to leave the default and make your life spectacularly you? You're in the right place.
We have a fun group with us today.
A group. I'm super excited.
The Neuro-Somatic Intelligence team.
The crew, if you will. I'm really excited to share this episode with everyone listening. So if you are listening to this and you happen to have a body of any kind,
and you've ever felt kind of weird in it,
or if you have ever had any sensation in that body, or if you've ever not understood why you're reacting a particular way to any particular situation in your life, then great. Awesome.
There's help.
There's help. This episode is for you. And so we brought, these are our trainers. These are the folks who trained us in doing Neuro-Somatic Intelligence. Ken and I happen to apply NSI in our group containers where we're talking to people who are transitioning from a monogamous imagination to a non-monogamous imagination. But the thing is, NSI is for anybody.
We also use it in our relationship with our children.
Oh, yeah. In our workplaces, I don't think I could have done the time on the board that I just finished without this sort of help. Yeah. So we've been using it everywhere. And the reason I think it's so important to highlight its counter-transference, that's not the right word. The transferability of NSI as a tool set, is so important to me, because sometimes I notice that my clients get resistant to the idea that this is all just so much work. Like, couldn't I just have an easier relationship? Couldn't we? And sometimes they'll say, like, why not? I think I'm just going to be monogamous. It'll just be easier. And first, I want you to just take a minute and remember, was it actually easier? Because that's a separate question. But our lives are filled with complications. And we have a nervous system response to literally everything. Sometimes that response is really aggressively uncomfortable. Sometimes it's nothing. It's that numbness feeling.
Right.
And that's a response too.
And some buttons and switches, some tools and techniques for working with all of that complexity is absolutely life-changingly helpful.
Right. So even if you are not sure whether you want to invest the time in learning this because of your relationship structure, I want you to think beyond that too. I want you to include, where else do you interact with people? Where else do you show up and support other people in their growth, in their changes? And that might be directly as like a helping professional. I know a lot of you are helping professionals. So this is a great episode for you if you're wondering how you can incorporate more somatic work into your work. But also, so Ken, you're a software architect.
I am.
You're an engineer by training.
Oh, yeah. I think I see where this is going.
Does that help you at your job?
I'm an engineer by training, all about the logical positivism and whatnot and rational thought. And I'm working with people every day who get caught up in their own stuff, in their own
and they're supposed
bodies
to be,
and minds and emotions.
Making computer things happen.
They're supposed to be making computer things happen. And being able to help them work through their feelings and into getting the work done.
Really effective.
Really effective. And I mean, it started with me. Here I am working with all the people, and it's like, I'm starting to feel a little tense here. Okay, well, deal with that and then go do the thing. Right.
So here's how I would put that. If you are a person who in any way works with other people, then you have like an essential piece of your beingness is that you have a nervous system. And if you learn how to regulate your nervous system, then every time you interact with others, they have the opportunity to sync up with a more regulated person. Right, and so I want to be clear, you don't necessarily go into meetings and do NSI, though you absolutely can. And I would say should even, because I'm bossy that way.
There's a good call for that. There's a good reason that you do that. Yeah,
but even if you don't.
But I bring a regulated person
Right. And when you get dysregulated during a difficult meeting, during a difficult conversation, or you just had a hella hard deadline to meet,
Mhm.
I saw you using the tools to regulate over and over and over again. And I watched you then meeting these people who were also under intense deadline pressure. You were meeting them with more humanity. You were showing up to the party as a more whole self. And that's a kindness that you visit upon not just them, but then their families. Like that goes
Yeah.
out. That impacts
Right.
the whole world, because now you are showing up in a different way. So they receive a different leader in their space. And then that changes how they go home to their families.
Yeah.
It's
It is
and it
so
changes the
wonderful to
product you
think
make.
about. It does.
And the product you make happens to be to help people with their healthcare and receive the financial support that they need for their healthcare.
Mhm.
This is, no matter where you're at, this is
And this goes to the transferability you were saying. You can apply this in whatever circumstance you're in.
right.
So good.
Okay, so we're going to be talking today with Melanie Weller, Matt Bush, and Elisabeth Kristof. Yes, you have talked to Elisabeth before. If you've listened here, you've heard from Elisabeth before. The three of them are the co-founders of the NSI Coaching and Training Program. They are also each gifted practitioners in their subspecialties and their amazing worlds. They each do very, very interesting things. And together, they have founded this amazing coach training program, but it's bigger than that. It's an ICF certified coach training program, but it is bigger. Neuro-Somatic Intelligence coaching is created and taught by these leaders in the field so that we understand how somatics and applied neurology can actually change lives, no matter where you're working, no matter what kind of relationship you have. The training program is enrolling very soon, so I'm going to recommend that everybody hop on over. There is a link in the show notes that will take you right to the upcoming webinar that'll help you understand even better how this could apply to your life, your world. The certification course equips people to meet their clients where they are. And we got a lot out of it personally, professionally. It's changed us. And the thing that totally blew me away is it was efficient. You know, we spent 3 months in a deep dive, 12 modules, getting really deep, and all the time in between practicing. And it was their live teaching that really nailed it for me.
Yes,
So you'll get a little taste of how each of them shows up in that live teaching way, because it is transformative.
And and what we got out of it are things that both you and I use every single day, multiple times, because it's easy.
Because it's easy.
It's so easy to do.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so buckle up. This is a great episode. Okay, fantastic. This is very exciting. So first off, we get to manage multiple voices. Everybody get your ear holes ready, because Elisabeth, Matt, and Melanie,
it's great to have you back.
Fantastic
Great
to have
be
you
back
here.
with you.
And we're going to talk nervous system regulation. I literally cannot imagine a more well-rounded and amazing panel of people to talk about this. So I want to just first give each of you a chance to say hello and tell us why you care about nervous systems at all. Like, why? Because we're a relationship podcast. Why in the world do you care so much about this? And Elisabeth, I'm going to start off with you.
Well, I think, if your listeners have listened to some of the past episodes, they might know this already, but I am someone who has some complex trauma, and I've lived my life navigating relationships. I've had a tough time navigating relationships. And the more I've learned about that, the more I understand a lot of the stress, and a lot of my health outcomes come from that relational stress. And I also have a background in applied neurology, and I understand how the nervous system and the body work. And I believe that has been what has made it possible for me to heal deficits in my nervous system, to change my internal state, and to change those relationship patterns, and then live a life that reflects a different state of being, so that even though I have highest score in trauma, I can have safe and healthy relationships. I can live a big life. I can have a business and be visible. And I think that everyone deserves that. And a lot of the people that I know and that I love and that I work with are people with complex trauma and high ACE scores. And they're also some of the most amazing people I've ever met that have a lot to contribute to the world. And there's tools that I think make it possible for those people to have a different experience and to do all the good work and things that they are meant to do in this world. So that's why I care about the nervous system.
I love that. And I'm super curious because Elisabeth, I kind of knew where you were going to go, but I want to hear from Melanie too, because you all come to this world from a different perspective. Like your entry point to this neurosomatic world is different. So Melanie, why does it matter for you?
Yeah, well, my entry point was through being a physical therapist and being and working in athletic training before that. And in hindsight, I can tell you in the bigger picture that it's really been all about healing my own vagus nerve, that developing this expertise in treating the vagus nerve as a pinched nerve was really about figuring out myself. But in the moments along the way, it was really about playing this game of how easy can it be to get somebody better?
Oh, that's
that
really sweet.
We're all working way too hard. And I from very early in my career had a full caseload of people with complex trauma. And I could have spent all day treating one of them head to toe. But I, I had 12 or 16 patients a day, and I had to figure out, okay, what 1, 2, or 3 things can I do to change 10, 20, 30, or 100 things for this person? And that's where working with the nervous system is really magical, and playing that game really, or seeing how that worked really kind of became my own drug of choice. It was just endlessly delightful to figure out how good can we, how can we change this game of how much are you caring to how good can it get?
Spectacular. And, you're reminding me too, Melanie, that when we come in through the path of having a high caseload, right? Like that's efficiency matters.
Yeah, right.
And that's one of my personal favorite things about NSI is it's efficient. And a lot of my clients don't want to waste time. And I so appreciate that. And Matt, you come in from another whole angle. Tell us about your take. Why the nervous system?
Yeah, I might have a little more cheeky answer, but I always tell people everybody has a brain and they need to know how to use it. Like there is no instruction manual on how our brain and nervous system work. And what I find in my relationships with my clients is that literally every day things are happening in my life or in their lives where something that used to be an obstacle or an argument or a pain or an anxiety can be traced back to something that's going on in their nervous system. And then we can use the neuro tools or the drills to do a reset and kind of re-regulate, or we can approach the conversation in a different way. And it completely changes our experience of just living life and being human, getting along with other people, because we're being more, I guess the best word is being more respectful of the way the nervous system works rather than fighting against it. And it just makes everything so much easier.
That makes total sense. And I think it was you. So I signed on for NSI. I'm going to be super real because I trusted Elisabeth. Elisabeth had fixed something pretty straightforward, I think, for me. Now, in retrospect, I'm like, oh, pretty straightforward. She'd given me some clues. And I was like, okay, so this works. I'm going to train. But you, in our first class, learning Neuro-Somatic Intelligence, you said, hey, the only way you interface with the world is through your nervous system. And there was the clarity of that moment was, oh, I know I've heard that before, but I don't think I've heard it as a person who works with complicated relationships every single day. Like the people who are listening right now, they want complicated relationships, right? They're doing non-monogamy or they're thinking about something new in their life. And yet we skip we skip this step of the only interface you have is your nervous system, the only
Yeah.
interface you have with the world. So there's something just so like, boil it right down at the root of it all. Well, are you going to work with the thing you actually have, or do you want to get lost in the weeds of all the other stuff? Because I mean, I love me some weeds, but I don't. It's just
Yeah.
not as efficient. So I
And
love that.
something I heard in what all of you said is that, and Melanie said it, how easy can I fix this? How simple can I make this be? And by getting at the point of contact between our inner world and our outer world, there it is. That's as simple as it gets. And you deal with people with complicated relationships. And so often they're in this like tension between, they think it needs a complicated answer, a
Right.
complicated procedure, but they want it to be simple, but they're not sure it can be simple. And the work that I've done with all of you, it's so straightforward and so effective. It's just stunning.
So, you know what? I would love to spend, honestly, as much time as you're willing to during this episode, like really hearing how each of you, as an expert in nervous system interface, like that's like really like, how do we actually make change? How do you put it into your own life? You know, we're all grown-ups with relationships, no matter what kind of relationships you're in, your collegial relationships, your family relationships, your friendships, your romantic relationships, your children, your parental stuff. You know, I noticed that different people use the tools differently. Like we're not all applying them the same way. And I'm super curious how each of you is putting them into play. Like what's coming up for you where you're like, I know how to make it. Melanie, you're like, I feel like I'm just tractor beamed on you. Like, how do I make life easier? I can't imagine a question people would want to know more about than that.
Right. Well, and it is all relationships, and even your relationship with, you know, like with yourself and your environment. And, you know, I use a lot of archetypal concepts in my work, but I think one of the, where I have recently been focused for myself is really how is my how is my mother breathing in my body,
Yes.
and
Yep.
how is my father breathing in my body, and how is my ancestry and my epigenetics and all of those things expressing in my body, and how is and really using the nervous system regulation tools for that has been, you know, I think I'm well practiced with the foundational stuff that, you know, sometimes the foundational stuff works, but sometimes I have to get a little bit more creative because my nervous system starts to challenge me then at a higher level. And so the question I'm asking my nervous system about what it's reacting to has to be a little more precise or a little more nuanced to get to the, you know, like really what's happening here. And
I definitely noticed that myself, Melanie, because I also, I mean, I'm an archetypal psychologist, so it's always that like that those complex structures that I've already built into myself. Great. All that means is now I have this complex structure that I'm trying to interact with. I mean, it has its downsides.
It does. Yeah, no, I hear you. And at the end of the, you know, and sometimes it really is very easy. Like I know that when my breath gets really locked up, that I can look between something close and something far, and 90% of the time it will unlock my breath.
That's so like if I could like get out an air highlighter, I would highlight those words because like I have re-regulated my nervous system during like on stage talks and during sex using that one, like that trick, like look at somebody's shoulder, now look far away, like there, like it's so simple. I mean, I literally think that you all changed my life with even just the near far drill because everything got easier then. And then sometimes it's more complicated than that. But
one of the things that's changed for me is, well, first of all, the idea that the feelings are there's a tool. It's like, so, I mean, just today, I walked in before this interview and I was all flummoxed. I was all grouchy, and
He was nervous to see you all
I
again.
was nervous to see him. I couldn't figure out what the source was. And then I stopped thinking about what the source was. Just like, okay, so I'm feeling a bunch of stuff. I don't know why, but I know some things to do.
Yeah.
And I know some things that make my body feel better when it's feeling off.
And you've been married to somebody who asks why too many times a day. Sometimes we don't need to care about why. We could
Sometimes it's
just
the
do
what.
the how and the
It's
what.
more important the how. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you don't need to know because
Right.
your nervous system is spun up about something, and you're like, well, I could spend time diving back into it. Almost, we talk about, we want to avoid reactivating or re-traumatizing, right? Like,
Right.
let's just not. Like, let's just start from here with a new snapshot, do some drills to regulate, and then move forward.
Right.
And there's a time and a place to maybe go back and work on unpacking,
is.
working
But-
trauma.
But when you're in the middle of the feelings being spun up, it's probably not the best time.
Yeah, probably not the time.
Yeah.
Especially if you're about to have an interesting conversation with
Right.
someone you want to have. Because now I'm thinking, Matt, about walking into a date, right? Like if you're about to walk into a date, that's not the moment to think about all the why. That's the
Yeah.
moment to re-regulate and be like, right, now I can have a decent conversation with this person in front of me from a state where I am not just my walking trauma. I don't want to
Oh
be my
my
walking
gosh.
trauma
Yeah.
response, which is
So
actually a
much-
lot of dates now that I think about it.
But there's so much value there. Like, if even to what I think of is, like, 95% of our communication is nonverbal. Like, how am I presenting? What am I saying with my body, with my presence, with my energy during that date or during that conversation? How am I communicating and actually engaging with the other person, not including the words I'm actually saying? It's so valuable to actually be present in that moment, regardless of what the conversation is. But if the trauma or the dysregulation is creating such a fog or like a shaded lens that we're viewing this interaction through, it's like being built on a faulty foundation from the beginning, right? It's already on a cracked foundation. So being able to get ourselves into a place where we have a present mindful connection with our own body, with the environment, and with the other person, then we can have like a real conversation and start to build a relationship.
Right. Right.
And-
Elisabeth, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, also too, even if we are trying to go back and repattern past trauma and take that dive into that space, as Matt said, sometimes there is a place for that. But even if we are, we still want to be able to regulate and stay present and use our tools to be able to navigate through that and create a new experience so that we are not just reliving the trauma over and over again and creating the same outputs and exacerbating the protective responses that might happen in our nervous system. And you'd ask about real life examples in our relationships. And that reminded me of it because I am in partnership and we are doing somatic couples therapy because we do want to repattern the way that our trauma responses drive our interaction when we're under stress so that we don't keep replaying the same things over and over again. And for me, as someone with a lot of relational trauma in my early development, like it's hard for me. It's hard for me to go into that space. I found, and it was quite humbling, I found my window of tolerance in those sessions was very low before I dissociated. And the thing is, it doesn't do me any good to go to the session if I'm dissociated. And in fact, that's becoming a more well-worn path. I'm creating that response of checking out and protecting myself more in these conversations if I just keep doing that over and over and over again.
Right.
So into my therapy, I have had to bring my neurosomatic tools so that I can work directly with my nervous system, speaking to the nervous system in the language that it understands so that I can give it the stimulus that it needs by working with different systems and keep taking little pauses to re-regulate and come back before I get to that place where I have left. I mean, I've checked out, I'm gone, and I'm not there for my partner. I'm not really making the changes in our relationship patterns. I'm not getting any benefit out of the therapy. And so instead I interrupt it in little intervals and I use my tools to make the therapy more effective.
Yeah. Okay. I think this is super important to highlight because, butt in seat is not therapy. Like it is just not any more than butt in seat. It will get my book written. I have to still like put my hands on the typewriter and then like do it. I've noticed that there are a lot of clients in my world who show up to either a group, I have a group program and I do private work, who show up and there's a little bit of resistance to using the tools because they need to do exactly what you're describing, Elisabeth. They need to just allow themselves to notice and then like be the person who's, massaging a point or who's opening and closing their jaw. These are simple moves like the moves that you have taught us, I think, are the most simple tools I've ever seen. And the only hurdle I really see people having to jump over is, am I willing to do them? Am I willing to actually do them and not just revert into either a dissociated pattern or a hyper aroused, like I'm going to get into session and fight or get super analytical, like whatever your response is. Letting yourself be the one who's taking the tools and actually using them it's so courageous and so kind to everybody involved. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, it also like I did have to, I spoke with the therapist and said, hey, I'm going to be doing this. I spoke with my partner. I said, hey, I'm going to be doing this. And the thing is that it's just the truth that I know. Like I have a nervous system and it drives my outputs. And if I don't work with it also, I'm going to experience an outcome that I don't want. And it's going to be harmful for me, for my health, for the days, maybe even weeks following. And it's also going to be harmful to my relationship. And I'm paying a bunch of money and allocating
It's a waste of time, yeah,
to have this experience. And so it was just kind of a non-negotiable for me. Like once like this is the thing, it's underneath everything. And so to ignore that and not work with it, knowing everything that I know just wasn't an option.
yeah. I'm wondering if any of you have noticed in your own partnerships or close friendships, if you've noticed that some people have like get a little, I've noticed that some of my partners even have been a little disquieted by the fact that I am taking responsibility for my nervous system response. And that's not how they say it. What they notice is that I am now, I've taken off my glasses and I'm massaging here, or I'm doing a drill on my olfactory nerve or whatever. And there's some disquieting. There's like, oh, this person is no longer engaging in our old pattern. But I was ready to fight. I was ready to I was going to do the thing. And I'm just really curious how that's come up for you. Like I've noticed some people respond almost badly to it at first. So we really have to get into a meta conversation about why am I doing this and what's the overall benefit. But you all have partners probably who are like, yeah, we know they're going to do this stuff. We know they're going to do that.
Well, I think I suppose, yes, my husband's, I will say I've had a career in making people do funny exercises. So like it doesn't
phase him anymore.
It doesn't phase it doesn't phase him at all. But I think where it's been really magical, and one of the things that I really try to teach my clients is to not minimize the power of regulating yourself and then how then other people relate to you, because it completely changes the way people in your orbit are working. Like years ago, when my youngest son was little, he didn't want to was having difficulty learning how to read, labeled himself a bad reader, then didn't want to read, and it became this whole power struggle thing. And one day I had a breakthrough for myself, and hours later he came up and said, "Mom, I think I'd like to write a book." And I was like, "Great." I set him up and he learned, and he really learned how to read by typing in Word with spell check.
Yep.
And, and I didn't do anything. I mean, my own nervous system changed to the point that gave him the space to then step up and express something differently. And I would say that I've been married for over 31 years. And you're a lot of different people at some level. And, you go through a lot of different cycles in that length of a relationship. And it takes a lot of bandwidth to give your partner the space to figure out what they need to figure out without trying to figure it out for them.
Yeah.
And we have become, like I will say, at some level, we've been good at that all along, but we've gotten a lot better. And recently we just had this like my husband's had this whole breakthrough that's been really amazing. And like when I hug him or lay with him, it's like, oh, this is who I married. It's like that feeling that like that you didn't even realize you forgot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and he went ahead and initiated his own therapy and did all these things, which was basic, and I didn't have to be the professional in our relationship. It just happened.
So important. So that is huge all by itself.
Yeah, that's key stuff. I mean, you and I in our relationship, we've gone back and forth a bunch of ways. And when we first started using these tools, it was kind of awkward, like in the middle of a fight or the beginning of a fight as things were ramping up. Like, hey, maybe we should regulate. And at the beginning, that was them's fighting words.
Right.
But
maybe you should regulate.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
That's it.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
Maybe
You should regulate right now. I'm
what's
fine.
this read? Yeah. But the benefit of it was so obvious that it didn't last long.
It's also, I mean, so we shifted the word regulate. We had to do some conscious shifting around it so that we didn't start accidentally using it as a blaming, shaming sort of word, right? Like there's a lot of shame I notice people get into, like if you experience a lot of dysregulation or dissociation, then your partner may say, hey, it looks like you're dysregulated or it looks like you're dissociating. And the meaning behind those words matters far more than the words themselves. Those words are carrying a lot at that point. And, I think it took several months because we were in a highly dysregulated state while we were training with you. We were living outside during a major house renovation. So we were literally camping while also it was just insane. And so just having that word laid out by your partner, like, oh, I think you're dysregulated. Do you need to maybe just like do a thing? Yeah. We had to learn to defang it, de-shame it, and let it be.
The toddler had to learn not to go, I'm not dysregulated. Yeah.
And make it actually fun to say like, well, at least there's something to do. And for me, it came back to a lot of like, oh, at least there's something to do. And I would hear all your voices like, well, is what you're doing working?
Yeah.
Is the move you're playing out right now, is it working? And that would bring me back to my days training CrossFit, thinking like, if at first you don't succeed, maybe try doing what your coach said. And so when we'd be in one of these dysregulating fights, I'd think, okay, like if Matt were listening right now, would he suggest that I should maybe regulate my nervous system? Yeah. Okay. Then you know what? I'm just going to do it. There is something to be said for like neutralizing this concept and saying, this is not an if you're dysregulated. We all get dysregulated throughout the day. We all experience stress throughout the day. It's not a shaming thing, but I'm curious if you see people like resisting the work just because they're feeling like they don't want to name something being like wrong with them
you guys have lived through it, but you hit the nail on the head. Like you have to redefine the terms. And kind of defang was a good word that you used. You do have to take some of the punch out of it. And it's not only the word regulation, but it's talking about threat. Like a lot of my clients will overuse the word threat and they start to use it like every threat is an emergency. Oh, I'm in threat right now. Right. Well, you're always in threat. Like your nervous system is literally wired to perceive threats from your environment externally or internally. it's not going to stop doing that. So to start, if you adopt the language of, oh, I'm in threat right now, you're overstating your case in most cases, most times. Same thing for the word predictability. Like the nervous system does want predictability. It wants things to be predictable, but it can be very overused to say, oh, you're unpredictable right now. I don't know. I never know what to expect.
Right.
So it's kind of like avoiding the extremes. Let's avoid the blanket statements and the definitive always and never kind of things to go, I'm on your team. You know, like we're on the same team. We're trying to get through this conversation or this discussion in a positive way that serves a better future.
Right.
What can we do to make that happen?
Yeah. You know,
But I'm certainly
I was just going to add another word that comes up, and I'm sure you hear it all the time. It's trauma response. Like just like constantly, like I mean, it's such a useful concept. And yet now I'll have clients who are like, I'm in trauma response. Like, yes, I know, because you lived a traumatized life and you're doing your healing work, and like your partner literally cannot exist in your experience and not ever stress you, not ever like come up against your stuff. And so, like allowing us to know these terms and not overuse them to the point of meaninglessness.
And I've certainly had both family members and clients who kind of pull away from the work because they get caught up in the language a little bit, or they perceive when I'm trying to observe and be caring, they perceive it as more of an attack or criticism. And I go, I mean, totally not pointing fingers, but I kind of step back and go, well, that's their nervous system.
Right.
Like that's their nervous system's lens of perception to think someone who's trying to help them is actually criticizing them. It doesn't mean they're right. Well, it's certainly not my intent. But when they are making that judgment, now we have to navigate that second level of, okay, now how are we going to respond?
Yeah.
So I'd say it happens all the time.
Yeah.
I'll totally own that. I mean, I couldn't use the word trauma to describe my life until just a very few years ago, because it had been overused so much by some people I really cared about, but who I could not allow myself to identify as being like them. I loved them dearly, but they were very violent people. And so they identified as trauma victims. And I was like, I just couldn't allow that in my space. And it was actually listening to Elisabeth's story, being like, okay, I'm going to try rewiring this word and just being with the word as a more neutral statement. And also, when we were doing our training, so we were in NSI training, and you started using the word stress, and I instantly had a very that was so decompressing for me. Like, oh, stress. We just experienced stress through the day, and that word did not light me up. I could observe it more rationally and notice like, oh, I experienced stress because I stubbed my toe, or because we just got into an argument, or because my kid just asked for the car, whatever it was. And it didn't have all this judgment and baggage laden on it the way some of the other words are. So it does feel like a personal vocabulary for any given relationship, so that it works for you, could really go a long way to making this more doable.
I think the languaging is really important. I use the word contrast a lot because contrast to me is really the language of the nervous system. Neurons fire, they don't. And we call high contrast, we might call trauma. Lower contrast, we might call stress. But in the way that I like working with storytelling, like you wouldn't go see a movie or read a book and rave about it to your friends if it didn't have enough contrast on it.
Right.
In it. And your nervous system will not let you live a dull story. And that's
Mine
just
won't.
the end.
That's for sure.
That's just the end of that's all it is. You're just in contrast. You just have to find the contrast delicious, even though that's like, it takes some nervous system regulation to get to the point where you can do that.
I'm finding weaving my existential kink work and my shadow work and the nervous system work all together to allow myself to experience my high contrast life as in fact a choice, like to some degree. Like I'm leaning into more and more the fact that I am enjoying it, even these things that do bring up past trauma. I can now enjoy them because I know how to recalibrate, re-regulate into my window of tolerance again. It has become safe to experience those out of control feelings in a way that it wasn't even just like a year ago. That's remarkable to me. It's the knowing that my toolkit is more outfitted.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a huge benefit. I noticed right away that just having the tools got me so much further down the road to regulation without even having used them yet. It kind of feels like if I'm underwater. If I don't know when I'm going to get air again, I'll panic. If I know there's a thing to breathe in right here, I can relax. And so if I'm feeling the stress, like, it's okay. I can be in this stress for a little bit. If it gets too much, I have something I can do. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's made my public speaking way easier too. Same reason.
Yeah.
Like,
It's really beautiful. And it's interesting that you said you rewired the word trauma, which is literally the name of the NSI podcast, Trauma Rewired. And that is really the intention. It's the intention behind the podcast and the education that we bring to it, and behind the Neuro-Somatic Intelligence program is, I think, one of the greatest gifts, that understanding my nervous system and having this framework of looking at the input, the interpretation, the output, like the neurosomatic framework to look at my life and my behavior through, is that it's neutralized a lot of that for me. And I can look at my past and my behavior, and I can look at my relationships from this really different place of understanding that, like, I grew up in a certain environment, and I actually had a really healthy, well-functioning nervous system and brain that was trying to keep me alive, and that our brain's number one job is our survival. It's always asking that question, safe or unsafe, and then responding and bringing outputs to that. And then there are tools that I can use to create that safety, create the safety inside of myself, create my safety around other people. And when I have that understanding of how my operating system works, it's just different. It's created a different relationship to myself, where I can explore with curiosity, what are the outputs that I'm experiencing in my life? And I don't judge myself or think I'm broken or damaged or hopeless. And so then it creates this foundation to work with my body, to work with my brain, and completely change my whole reality.
you've become your
But
own
I have
ally.
to first start with that place of being able to get out of the shame and out of the freeze response that those reactions initially create.
Yeah.
And I can do that with better understanding.
Yeah. I'm totally hearing, like, you allied yourself to your nervous system. And I don't think that it had ever occurred to me, not even once before I was in training with you, that I was so antagonistic to my own nervous system, because I am a type A, high functioning, like, that's how I managed my massively traumatic childhood, was to ascend and like do more. I was constantly assaulting my nervous system, like, just constantly. And it's still taking daily effort to relax my grip and to let myself be with a nervous system that was trained to I've been training it to feel assaulted all this time. So, like, introducing so much more gentleness into my life, but with it was important for me that these were also tools, not just a new mindset. The mindset mattered a lot, like the reframing all mattered, but I also needed something active, because for me, I just it wasn't going to just be an idea that then turned me on to, like, okay, I just need to befriend my nervous system. I personally needed to have something to do, which is actually why I trained to teach other people how to do it. So that I was like, I have to do this for other people, or I knew I just wasn't going to show up to the party. So for me, like, that was a good reason. And I know that, like, you've made a whole organization to train people. I'm guessing some of our listeners are very intrigued. Like, what is that? What exactly is it to train in neurosomatic intelligence from your perspective? Either whoever thinks they want this answer, go for it.
Well, I'll just jump in first on one of the things that you were talking about. You were talking about how you keep pushing yourself in your healing modalities to the point of assaulting your nervous system. And I lean the same way. And one of the greatest things about neurosomatic intelligence, I think, is learning a framework to understand how your nervous system is reacting to the stimulus that you're providing, not just for yourself, but for your clients as well. So that you can dose appropriately whatever intervention you're giving them, because you have the ability to recognize how their nervous system is responding, what they're communicating to you through their nervous system. And you know when to scale back, and you know when to push forward, when they might need more stimulus. Do they need more stimulus? Do they need inhibition? And I think that's really important in the world of coaching, of somatics, of therapy, because I have seen and experienced many times how really well-meaning practitioners can overdose clients on whatever the intervention is, and unintentionally create really severe outputs in the nervous system, whether that's, protective stress responses like dissociation, but it could also be pain, it could be migraine, and it could be prolonged states of dysregulation that can lead to disease eventually. And so sometimes in our healing journey, we end up making ourselves worse. And so this training was really important to me, to not just get the practical, actionable tools out to practitioners that they can use to really implement in sessions so that they can have something to help their clients re-regulate, but to also have a deeper understanding of how the nervous system works and how it communicates, to know how to dose their work appropriately and really do no harm.
Yeah. Or can I just add, because I've noticed this more and more in my own work, be able to repair harm. Like I'm going to come up against stuff in sessions. I'm going to push somebody, dose a little too high. For me, it's usually going to be like taking them too deep into their story, or maybe going deeper into a conversation than they were ready for at the time. We don't catch it quite in time. But nervous system work combined with genuine repair skills goes a long way. A long way. So I'm grateful as a practitioner. I'm really grateful to have that ability, but also it's the understanding, like, the repair is going to need to meet the body and the mind together. I can't ask my client to necessarily know that ahead of time. They're not necessarily going to know when I've pushed too far. So we may have to, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, sometimes they don't catch it. And so
Yeah.
if you have really good observation skills as the coach or the therapist, sometimes you'll catch it, even if they didn't. Sometimes you won't.
Yeah.
And like part of NSI is having the tools to be able to recover after the fact, whether they're still in the office or on Zoom with you, or after they've left the session, they can know how to recover and re-regulate again. So to me, like doing NSI, the knowledge that Elisabeth described is invaluable to working with other people and other humans. But to do the work, I tell people it's like doing low tech, easy exercises.
Yeah.
Like vision, sensory inputs, vision training, breathing training, the slightest little bit of energy work just to feel your own body energy and movement. But all these things are simple, easy exercises that most of them take less than 30 seconds. You could do 3 or 4 in a row and only be working for 2 minutes at a time, but completely change how your nervous system feels.
Right.
But it's such an easy way to start to engage with the nervous system. It isn't like a deep dive into the inner workings of the body, or a deep dive into your trauma or your somatics. It's very simple, actually, to do the work.
Right.
The hardest thing about it for 90% of my clients is just remembering to do it.
That's it.
Like, it's so easy, they forget.
Yes. Yeah. And I have people who are like, yep, every time. What I need from you is to remind me to do the work. I need
Exactly.
I need you to remind me to do it, because it's too easy. And so I don't, like, we're so used to being like, it has to be hard if it's not hard.
And it comes from two places too. You've lived a pretty dynamic emotional life throughout your whole life.
I have.
And I went through a long period of time having radical acceptance of whatever I was experiencing. This is fine, whatever it was, whatever I was feeling. this must be how it feels to be here, and that must be normal. Those weren't all normal experiences.
So you didn't even try.
So I didn't even try. It didn't occur to me that there was anything to do. I was like, no, this is what happens. I never talked to anybody, never asked anybody. And if I had, they might have been able to tell me. But
tell me you're an American male in your 50s without
right,
telling me.
You're the meme of the guy sitting in the dumpster fire saying, this
Yes.
is
You're that guy.
fine.
This is fine. Yep. I don't need help. What?
Right.
Yeah.
But remembering that there's something to do, and then it's such a small thing up against something that feels so large sometimes. And the experience of it repeatedly having significant impact on these large feeling nervous system experiences.
Yeah.
Well, it leaves me in a spot to understand why the people that I talk to don't remember to do it.
Right.
Or aren't sure, like, really, I don't know. They don't pick up the daily practice because it feels like nothing.
And that's the thing, right? It's because it's the combination of daily practice and intervention.
Yeah.
It's the combination there that really makes it work so well. And I so appreciate that you have taught us to like stay with it, like maintain your daily hygiene practice of nervous system work, train it. You know, I come from, like, we owned CrossFit gyms. Like you don't just go pick up a deadlift bar. Like you train it every day. You know, you train the ability to do that, not by doing deadlifts every day. You train the ability by training the system. I so appreciate that as well. And when people show up in my space, it it is really common that they will say, this doesn't work. The NSI doesn't work. And I'm like, how often are you doing it? They're like, I haven't been doing it. Like, okay, so what you have there is a belief. Let's get into this, because until you're doing it, I don't want to hear that you can't. Let's stay with it. So like, okay, I'm hearing then, not just from my own experience, but I'm also hearing how you three have developed something that is applicable across such a wide range of helpers, right? I'm thinking like NSI work is good for anyone who's helping, as well as all humans. So I know that you have training coming up. And so I want to make sure people understand, like, this is both a personal practice, but also a practitioner's practice. So tell folks, like, what can they expect, and how can they find out more if NSI seems like something they should add to their professional world?
We are now enrolling for our fall cohort, and we are doing a free workshop on July 27th. So you can come and get an understanding of this framework, of the tools, and you can just go to neuro-somatic-intelligence.com to find out more about the workshop and the program. Because as a coach, as a practitioner, as a therapist, you may know, just like we've talked about in this conversation, that you don't want to go back and revisit trauma over and over again in the name of healing, and that it's not actually helping your clients. And you can also feel what it does to your own nervous system, like the burnout that it creates in you. And you also know that it's not as simple as saying it's in the past, let it go. You can see how it shows up in your client's body and continues to shape the present until you repattern the reactions and the outputs, because trauma really lives in the now, in the body and the nervous system. So NSI is really a forward-facing protocol that's going to help you create that change in the nervous system and in the body without reliving the past, to continue to process it and give you a strong foundational neuroscience knowledge to not just for trauma resolution, but for behavior change, for performance, for visibility, to help your clients expand into new relationships. So we are here for all of that. And again, the workshop is July 27th, and we'd love to just connect with all of you there, neurosomaticintelligence.com.
So I want to encourage people personally to take that seriously. I didn't know where this was going to fit into my work until I got into it. And it makes sense. Like, once you start seeing all of the different ways this can be applied, it just makes sense. And I don't know. I feel like when the work that you three are doing has filtered into enough different healing modalities, industry practices, right? Like, that's a changed world.
Yeah.
That's a changed world. So I thank you so much for developing this and for making it really, really accessible and learnable. Like it's just so darn learnable. I really, really appreciate it. So
Yeah.
thank you so, so much. And thank you for joining us here today so people can know more about what this NSI stuff is that Ken and I are constantly yammering on about on this podcast.
Yeah, you don't
Really
just have to
appreciate
listen to us.
Thank
We'll
you
learn.
for having us. It's always such
thank
fun
you.
to see you guys.
Yeah. So
Thanks,
thank you,
Jen.
Melanie. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Elizabeth. And yeah, we'll make sure all the links are up and ready to go for you so you can get to that next opportunity to learn from them.
Thanks, everybody.
There's no one right way to design your relationship. And lots of people, actually about 25%, according to a recent national survey, are interested in some type of open relationship. But how do you know if you are ready to open up happily? Not everyone is, and that's no problem. I've got a 60-second quiz that will give you the answer. And even better, you'll walk away with your next step, whether you're good to go or not so much when it comes to opening up. And this is no BuzzFeed nonsense. I personally designed this quiz from my years of academic research. Go to joliquiz.com. That's JOLIQUIZ.com and find out if you're ready to open up happily and what to do if you are or if you're not.